Hello everybody and welcome to the second video in the Complete Rock Guitar Beginners course. Now today we're going to be learning some more advanced riffs, learning how to use more than one finger on our left hand and learning some cool new rhythms, okay? So let's get started. Guys, so as you saw, we've got a few new cool riffs for you to learn today. Now they're a little bit more advanced than what we've been doing before, but they're still nice and easy, and if you've learned everything in the first lesson, which you can find a link to in the description below, then you should have no trouble learning what we've got here, okay? So as you saw, the first riff that we're going to learn today is this. There we go. Okay, so we're using the same chords as what we learnt last lesson, but the difference is here is we're picking a little bit faster than we were before, and we're now using two of the fingers on our left hand, okay? So before, we were playing every chord with our index finger, like this. But now we're going to be introducing the third finger as well, because if you can use more than one finger, then that means that you can keep your hand in the same place and you don't have to move it up and down the neck. So that makes it easier to play, okay? So I'll play that riff one more time for you and then we'll break it down and go through how to learn it. Okay, so first I'll introduce the new chord that we've got. Now it is technically the same chord as what we were doing before, but we're playing it with our third finger instead of our index finger. So this is what we're doing. We're going on to the 5th fret, which if you remember from last lesson is the one with the second dot on it, makes it nice and easy to find. And we're placing our third finger across the neck, just like this, with our thumb behind the neck, and we're squeezing together to make sure that we press down the 3rd and 4th strings again, okay? So this is how it sounds. So again, the important thing to remember here is that you keep your hand relaxed. Now it will feel awkward using your third finger to do this at first. It obviously will. It'll feel a bit like when you first tried to do the chords in the last lesson with your index finger, because again, we're just learning a new thing. But it doesn't have to be difficult. So remember, if you take it slow and you stay as relaxed as you can and keep your thumb behind the neck, then it'll be nice and easy, okay? Because once again, if we've got the thumb over the top of the neck, that means it's more difficult to press the strings down onto the fretboard and get a clear note. But if we've got the thumb behind, then we can just squeeze our thumb and finger together, just like this, and it makes it nice and easy, okay? So here's that chord once again. And again, with my pick, I'm making sure that I'm only picking the 3rd and 4th strings. There's the 4th one, and there's the 3rd one, and then we play them together, just like that. Okay, so that's the new fingering for that chord that we've done. So now the actual riff itself starts on the 3rd fret. We're doing that index finger bar again. Remember, a bar is when we're using one finger to press down more than one string on a certain fret. So we're barring with our index finger across the 4th and 3rd strings, and then we're picking them, and this time we're picking them twice, okay? So we're going like that. So practice that on its own for a little while and make sure that sounds nice and clean. If you're getting a sound like this, then that's not clean. So that means you need to practice the chord a bit more, make sure your technique's nice and good, and then you'll be able to play it, okay? So we go. Now the next part of the riff, we go. So that's part 1 of this riff, shall we say. So after we've done the 2 strums here on the 3rd fret, then we place our 3rd finger on the 5th fret on the 4th and 3rd strings, and then we play that twice as well. Okay, So remember just to practice that chord on its own first, get it sounding nice and clean, and then you can add it into the riff. So you can go like that. Now a nice little exercise to use to practice this is going and you're just going between those two chords on the 3rd and 5th frets with your index finger and your 3rd finger. And that gets you really used to changing between the two chords and making sure that they're both nice and clean. Now if you place your thumb on the neck somewhere in between these two frets, so I'll turn the guitar over so you can see, when I'm playing these two chords in succession, my thumb is about there. So it's sort of on the 4th fret here, it's sort of in between both of those two frets. So that means that I can get a nice amount of pressure on both of the chords, so I can press the strings down on both of them in turn without having to move my thumb around, okay? Because the less movement we do, the easier it is to play. So that's why we're introducing the new finger. So I'll play that again for you. So once you've got a hang of that exercise, then we can learn the rest of part 1 of this riff. So there, we're doing 2 strums on the 5th fret, on the 3rd fret, sorry. And then we're doing 2 strums on the 5th fret. And then a strum just on the open 3rd and 4th strings. Okay, so that's how this sounds. I'll do it slowly, so as if you're practicing it, and then I'll do it up to speed, like the full speed of the song. It doesn't matter if you can't get it to quite that tempo yet, maybe the picking is the problem, or maybe it's your fretting, you can't quite change between the chords fast enough. That's absolutely fine, okay? Don't worry about the speed at first, just try and play it accurately. Now there's a nice little game we can play to make practicing this a bit more fun. And this game is how many times can you play this perfectly in a row? So forget about speed for a moment and say, okay, I wonder if I could play this riff 10 times and not make a single mistake, okay? So you could go... Okay, I've played it perfectly once and then... Oh, I made a mistake that time, okay. In that case, I'll slow down a bit and then I'll see if I can do it 10 times perfectly at that tempo. So I could go... Okay. I can play it perfectly there, see if you can do it 10 times or maybe even 15 or even 20 if you're feeling really up to it, and see how many times you can play it perfectly. And once you can do that, speed it up just a little bit and then do the same thing and a little bit and the same thing, and then you can get like a high score going, you know, how many times can I play it without making a single mistake. And this is a great way to work on your consistency, work on your technique, make sure your hands are relaxed and everything, and it makes it fun too, okay? You could even write down your high score if you wanted to and try and beat it the next day, you know. So that was the first part of our riff. Now I'll play the full riff for you again and then I'll say what the second part is, okay? Okay, so that's repeat 1 of our riff. So the next part goes... Okay, so it starts off with 2 strums just of the open 3rd and 4th strings again, like this. And then we place our 3rd finger again on the 5th fret, barring across the 4th and 3rd strings, okay? And we pluck those strings again. And then we place our index finger on the 3rd fret, again on the 4th and 3rd strings, and go... And then strum the open strings. So all together, that's... Okay, now pay attention to the rhythm there, because the rhythms in this lesson are a little bit more complicated than what they were in the first lesson. It's not anything difficult, but just pay attention and try to make sure that you're in time, because the rhythm of the notes that you play, i.e. when you play them, is just as important as which notes you're playing, okay? So I'll play it once again so you can get a feel for the rhythm. Now if you want to, you can tap your foot to the rhythm, okay? So there you saw I was nodding my head and, you know, getting in the groove of it, so to speak. So you can do that, and that helps you stay in time. So I could go, and there I'm making sure that I'm following the beat as I'm playing the riff, okay? So once you've mastered that second part of this riff, then we can put it together with the first part to play the full thing. Okay, so again, when you're first learning this, you'll probably want to play it much slower than that, but make sure you master part 1 and part 2 separately, because then it'll be easier to put them together. It's like if you were trying to learn to sing and dance for, say, a stage production, if that's your kind of thing. If you were learning the singing part and the dancing part to a certain song, well, you'd learn to sing the bits separately to learning to dance them, and then you'd put them together, okay? You wouldn't try and learn all of the singing and all of the dancing all at the same time, because you'd get overwhelmed and it wouldn't work. So do the same with this riff. Play part 1 and get that really nice and mastered, make sure it's nice and easy to play, and then try and do part 2, okay? And then we've got the full riff. There we go. Now, when I played the riff in the beginning, you'll notice that there was actually a change. So I played that full riff once, and then I played it again, but the second time I played it, the ending was slightly different. See if you can hear what I mean. So part 1 of each repeat of the riff is exactly the same, but when we play part 2, we play it slightly differently. So the first time I played it like this, and the second time I played this. So as you can see, what we've done is we've swapped the note on the 5th fret and the note on the 3rd fret around. So what this does is add a nice bit of variety and structure to the riff, and this is a great thing to do to make your riff sound more interesting, get your songs sounding better, and we'll go through all that when we go through how to write your own stuff, which you can actually do a lot easier than many guitar players think, so look forward to that lesson. So again, the first time I played it, I went... So that was the open strings twice, and then the 5th fret, sorry, and then the 3rd fret, and then the open again. Now, the second time I played the riff, I played it slightly differently, because I went open twice, and then I played the 3rd fret, and then I played the 5th fret, and then I played the open strings again. So, like that, okay? So, as you can see, it's a nice simple variation. If you can play one well, then you can probably play the other as well. So just make sure that you do that little variation, because it does make it sound cooler. So I'll play the full thing for you again. So it's nice and easy. So that's the first riff for this lesson. Practice it, have fun with it, whack up the volume on your amp and rock out with it, and then go on to riff 2. Okay, so once you've got a basic handle on that first riff and you've learnt both the parts of it, put them together and you can play it easily, then we're going to move on to the next riff, okay? So this one goes like this. This one's a little bit more challenging in a rhythmic sense, okay? So the rhythm is the really important thing to listen out for. Now, later on in the beginner's course, we'll go through how to read rhythm notation, so you can write rhythm out on a piece of paper and you can read it and use that for reference and use it when you're practicing. But for now, just listen nice and closely to the rhythm and then you'll hopefully get it, okay? So this one's more of a rhythm challenge rather than a challenge with either of the two hands. So this is how it goes again. So we're using the index finger and the 3rd finger for this, but instead of being on the 3rd fret and the 5th fret, we're now on the 5th fret and the 7th fret, okay? So We are higher up the neck, but again, that doesn't make it any harder to play. So it's still nice and easy, we're still using the same concepts. Now, when you can play this riff, the first one will be even easier because this riff really focuses on making sure that you're good at changing between the two fingers and changing between the two chords, okay? So this riff, the first part is like that, okay? So nice and slowly. So we're starting with our index finger pressing down the 3rd and 4th strings on the 5th fret, okay? So these are the same notes that we were playing with our 3rd finger in the first riff, but now because we've moved our hand up the neck, we're playing them with our index finger, okay? So this is the first part. So that's the first note of the riff. Now the second part, the second note that we play, is we use our 3rd finger to press down again the 3rd and 4th strings, okay? So we're pressing it down on the 7th fret. Now the 7th fret is the 3rd dot along on the neck, okay? So again, you could just count the frets if you want to. So that's what it sounds like, okay? So we strum that note twice when we play it. So we go, and that's the first 3 chords that we play. Like that. So practice that little bit. You can play it really nice and slowly if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. Like that, okay? And now comes a bit that's a little bit more difficult because we're changing between these 2 chords quite quickly. So this is the first part of this riff again. So in that part we go, which we've already learned, and then we go, so we change between those chords quite quickly. So we play the 5th fret again, exactly the same notes on the 3rd and 4th strings. And then we play the 7th fret again on the 3rd and 4th strings. So this is the whole thing nice and slowly. Like that. So the thing that makes this challenging is when we're going, when we're switching between the 3rd finger and the index finger and then going straight back to the 3rd finger again. So a nice easy exercise to practice this, just like with the first riff, is like that, okay? So the first part of that riff that we've now learned is, now the second part that we're going to learn now is like that, okay? So we start on the 5th fret using our index finger to press down the 4th string and the 3rd string. Again, we're barring, so we're using one finger to press down both strings. And we play that note twice. And now we're going on to the 7th fret using our 3rd finger. So we're playing that note twice as well, but listen closely to the rhythm because we're not just going, we're going like that, okay? So some of the notes are held for a little bit longer than others, so I'll play it nice and slowly for you. And again, it's helpful just to rock your head or tap your foot in time with the rhythm so that you can make sure you're playing in time, and it helps to understand where the rhythms fit as well and how long each note's held for. So that second riff altogether, when you've learned those 2 parts and practiced them together, is this. So, if you listen carefully, you'll know that there's something else that I'm doing with this second riff, okay? So I'll play it without doing this thing. And here it sounds with me doing this thing. Okay, so you may have noticed there that what I'm doing is muting some of the notes. So this is what it sounds like when I let a note ring out and I don't mute it. And this is what it sounds like when I mute it or cut it off before it rings out for too long. Like that, okay? So what I'm doing here, this is with the picking hand that I'm doing this. So I'm playing the note with my pick. Again, I'm holding between my index finger and my thumb. So I'm strumming the third and fourth strings. And then once I've done that, then I'm using this part of my hand here. And I'm pressing that against the strings to stop them from ringing out, okay? Like that. Now you don't have to hit the strings hard or anything like that. All you have to do is touch them and they'll stop ringing, okay? So you can practice it on its own just like that. You can use any of the chords we've learned so far and just practice that muting motion where you pick and then mute. Pick, mute. Pick, mute. You do that over and over again a few times and you'll start to get used to it, and then before long it'll be automatic, okay? So in our riff, we mute a few different notes within it. So we go like that. So there are a few muted notes in there. And we'll take part one of our riff first, which is this. So the only note we're muting there is the very last one. So we play all of the notes just as normal, just picking them. And then when we play that last note in part one, we pick it and then mute. So then we pick it and we press this part of our hand against the strings, and then that stops them ringing out, okay? So it goes pick, mute, like that. And pick and mute, okay? So practice that part one with the muting, then once you've got the hang of it, then move on to part two, okay? So this is part two of the riff. So two of the notes are muted in part two. So the first one, like that, so that's on the 5th fret, this note here, we go, and we mute that, so pick, and then mute with your hand, pick, mute, and then we go, and we mute that note as well, so that's the 3rd one that we play, so we go, pick, mute, and then we pick, and then pick again and mute, okay? Like that. So pick, mute, pick, change to the 7th fret, pick and mute. Okay? So once you've got the hang of that, then we can add in the final bit. So we've got and then the last final part is just strumming that chord on the 7th fret again on the 3rd and 4th strings. Like that, okay? So all together with the muting, nice and slowly, this is what it sounds like. I'll play it again for you. Just like that, okay? So nice and easy. Now if you play it without the muting, you'll definitely notice the difference now. And here's with the muting. There it is. So it's nice and easy to do, but it does make a difference to how the riff sounds because it adds a bit more dynamic variety. Now dynamics is just how loud or quiet a song is. So adding in these pauses, these stops, these breaks or mutes as you want to call them, adds in a bit of quiet because we're playing them, we're playing the chords, and then suddenly it stops, and then we play the chord again and then it stops and so on. So that adds a bit of interest. So if I play it without the mutes again, it sounds okay, but it does sound a bit bland and it just sounds the same all the way through. But with the mutes, just like that. So it adds a bit more interest, and you can do this with your own riffs when we get to writing your own stuff further on in the lesson course, okay? Okay then guys, so I hope you've enjoyed learning these two riffs today and you've got a better handle on rhythm, you've learned how to mute the strings and you've learned how to use some more fingers on your left hand. So here are the two riffs again as a recap. Okay, so that's our first riff, and the second riff we learned was just like that, okay? So learn these two riffs separately, and then you could even try putting them next to each other to make almost like a song, okay? So this is what that sounds like. There we go, and I don't know about you, but I think that sounds quite cool, and it's really easy to play. We're using the same chords, the same fingering, all that kind of thing for both riffs, okay? And we'll be doing even more of this stuff in the future lessons to come. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you'd like to subscribe to get updates about when the next beginner lesson is out, then the link is in the description below. And you can also check out my blog where I post free lessons, articles, reviews, and all that kind of thing, and that's also down there, okay?